Welcome, everyone. That's Gabriella Taylor here, and I have a very special guest today, Casey Rogers. She is becoming a dear friend of mine, and she also lives in the same area that I live in Montecito. And Casey, I'm so happy for you to be here with me today and for us to really explore a conversation around what it takes for women who seek to live in alignment with core values and with an authentic way of being to truly be the change that we all wish to see and be in the world. So thank you for being an example of this, and I'm thrilled that you're here.
Thank you for having me. You're a dear friend and somebody I really look to as a woman who is leading with her values and creating so many positive ripples. So thank you, Gabriella.
Oh, thank you. And for those of you that don't know Casey, she is the founder and CEO of Talea Insights. So she brings forward over 30 years of experience in the nonprofit, philanthropic, and business sectors. She works from a long view perspective of positive change with a focus on tangible impact and bold results. Casey has launched multiple ventures, including Talea Insights, the Ellen Fund with Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi, and Deep Roots, an African scholarship fund. Casey has also worked with more than a dozen high net worth families to direct their philanthropic legacy. Casey holds a sacred appreciation for natural and human global diversity and works towards supporting a world that thrives for all. I love that thrives for all. That word really stood out to me. So thank you, Casey, and delighted that you're here. And so the reason why I like to bring women together in these conversations is because I think it's just really helpful to peel back the curtain behind what it actually takes to follow our dreams, what it actually takes to fall down and pick ourselves up. Because from the outside looking in, it can be easy to be like, oh, Casey, you're doing so many amazing things. I'm not like you. But the reality is that it's us ordinary women that have an extraordinary vision in our hearts that as we endeavor to fulfill this extraordinary vision, that's what makes us exceptional. And to me, it's us ordinary women being really willing to answer the call and do the work necessary to become the woman that truly does lead with love. And so I would love if we could start today with you sharing a little bit of your story about what inspired you to create Talea. And could you just share a moment when you decided to step away from perhaps what was the financial safety nest of your family's shares? And I believe you sold them and you sold us an amount of them. And you really chose to invest in yourself and believe in yourself and your dream. So, what was that like for you? And how did it feel to invest in your own resources in making this vision a reality?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that question and because it really sparks in me a excited reaction, right? To be able to sort of take you on that journey. So as we're talking, Talea Insights is 2 years old. So that feels great and exciting. And we've certainly crossed the first year threshold and now the second year and on to our third. Uh, but the answer to your question really begins in Antarctica. Maybe an unlikely place, but I was invited on an expedition for climate and conservation leaders in early 2022 with the polar explorer Robert Swan. And this was a 2-week expedition. We began in southern Argentina, across the Drake's Passage, explored the Antarctic Peninsula, and I had time on this expedition, right? We have a full family life. And I had time to listen to lectures, to meditate, to write, and to be in nature, to be in the most glorious natural space. And at the very end of this journey, I was listening to a guided meditation that one of the other expedition participants was leading. And it was all about imagining that you're on a beach and there's a line in the sand, and that on one side, like the side closest to you, you're leaving what you don't wish to take with you going forward. And on the other side of the line is what you're aspiring to, what you want to be, where you want to go, how you want to show up in the world. And it really was in that exercise that I said, I only want to be in leadership positions. I have done enough, been around enough to know what I want to be engaged in, what I'm good at, where I want to put my energy. And I really want it to be where I'm in the driver's seat. Not that I won't be supportive, because of course I will be in so many other ways, but use my precious time and resources in ways that I can drive things forward. And that at the time, I was running the Ellen Fund. We had just, uh, had this incredible opening of a new research center for African conservationists, young African conservationists. We deployed $11 million to support conservation work globally. It's like I was revved up, right? To continue doing this social impact work and working as an accelerator. And so that began my dreaming of like, what could this be at a bigger level, where it's not just one project at a time, but it's building a firm with multiple people who I could work with as a team to be able to accelerate positive social change.
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
simultaneously, you mentioned about, shares in the family business. I was a minority owner in our family business when our dad died unexpectedly. Uh, 11 years ago, my brother and sister and I became owners of the business. And I was a minority owner, but worked very closely with my brother for those 10 plus years, as a advisor, ghostwriter, board member, right? Supportive of the sales work, all of this. But ultimately, he was both the CEO and the majority owner. And I love him dearly, but he held all the power. And my ability as a diplomat had run its course. And I think a minority owner is a diplomat in essence, right? They can only try to be as persuasive as possible and hope that that goes somewhere. And so it was in that assessment that I realized, let me take some of the capital that I was given at the time of my dad's passing and repurpose it. And repurpose it into that sort of nest egg or initial capital necessary to really have the confidence to launch Talea Insights. The money was less about a direct investment and it was more about the security. Looking back,
Mm.
it was like, okay, I have something to lay back on. So now let me go forward.
Mm.
And in philanthropy, we talk a lot about capital, right? Most of the times that's thought of as financial. And certainly in this story that I'm telling you right now, it the gist of what I've articulated is financial. But there are other forms of capital, like human capital and social capital, right? And so it was that financial backing that was helpful, but it was also the deep belief that I had in my own idea and the belief of trusted loved ones around me who heard the vision for Talea Insights. Talea, by the way, is derived from a Greek word meaning ultimate purpose, right? Helping leaders carry out their ultimate purpose, working as an accelerator. This is the work of Talea Insights. The trusted folks around me believed in that too, and I went for it.
There are so many things in what you just shared, but that I find really rich. But there's two things that stand out to me. One is this calling inside to stand forward as a leader,
Mhm.
because we live in a world where women either A, they don't identify as a leader, even though the truth is we're all everyday leaders. We're leading our lives, we're leading our bodies, we're leading our households, we're taking the lead in what sort of healthcare we receive, or if we purchase organic farmers market based food, or food that is sprayed with chem and factory farmed. Like, we're making everyday leadership positions all of the time. And yet what I find is the Western feminine psyche, A, she doesn't see herself in a lot of the models of leadership that are out there, which are often, old white men, or the qualities of leadership that can be more dominating and domineering, we don't want to see ourselves as. And yet, I'm really committed to the conversation where we recognize that we're all leaders and we all have something inside that is calling us forward to really. That is calling us forward to further the beauty of life. And so I just want to call that out as a woman. that there was this thrust in you, this
Mhm.
impetus in you that recognized yourself as a leader. And then I love this piece about the support, that not only did the money give you the invisible sense of support
Mhm.
behind you, but also the support of your network and your community and your family.
Mhm.
Because a lot of us, like I didn't grow up with that.
Mhm.
My life has never been one of feeling part of a tribe. It's
Mhm.
been maybe there are one or two people that I feel that deep, deep connection with. And so I've never personally known, and I know there's many people watching now that haven't had that sense of support to lean into of, oh, my community or my friends or my family believe in me, they're rallying around me. And so I've had to create it myself. So I've discovered ways to create it. I create it through coaches that I work with, through therapists that I work with, through friendships with incredible women like you that I continue to develop and nurture. Yet it's something that hasn't been an automatic resource that's been there for me. So I'm just highlighting the piece of how crucial support is, whether we're born into it or we take the lead on
Mhm.
creating it for ourselves. These are just two really key pieces. Thank you for
Well,
sharing.
I'll give you a sort of a pragmatic example of receiving that support that goes beyond, having a generous circle around me, which is that in the maybe 5 or 6 months before I formally incorporated Talea and did the branding and launched it, I was on my way to New York City for a large conference. And I had the early language about what Talea was going to be and what we were going to do. And I decided on the plane there, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to
Mm,
intentionally pitch it
mm,
and just tell people this is what I'm doing and this is what it is. And these are the services we'll offer. In essence, to do a dress rehearsal,
mm,
to see how does it respond, what words work, what doesn't. And so some of these people I knew, some of them I didn't know. So for people who are feeling maybe lacking support or lacking that strong circle around them, there are ways that you can get that feedback that in essence is another form of support, right? Because I did get feedback where words landed wrong or people didn't understand or something worked better. I thought,
mm.
okay, I'm honing, I'm refining, right? I'm getting this tighter so that it is understood in the world in alignment with how I'm feeling it.
Mm. And there's so many different ways that support can show up. And what you're reminding me of is one of my mentors, Dr. Claire Zammit. She would say we cannot become ourselves by ourselves. And what you're
Totally.
saying reminds me of that. Like we cannot become ourselves, the fullness of who we are meant to be, the
Mhm.
fullness of our potentiality
Mhm.
by ourselves. There are too many forces at work, whether it's um, uh, in our brain, just different parts of our subcortical brain that we can't see. It doesn't speak English that we don't point to. So subconscious blocks.
Yes.
We just need the mirroring of each other. So I really love that. I really love that. And let's talk about some of my favorite topics. I mean, I love the topics of women, the topics of power, and the
Mhm.
topics of money. So, women,
Mhm.
money, and power, because a lot of what you're doing is really helping people steward their resources, their money,
Definitely.
other resources in ways that serve the greater good. And particularly now, as we're looking at what is being called the great wealth transfer, where I mean, currently it's up to $70 trillion is anticipated to be in the hands of American women by 2035. That's,
Right.
more or less 10 years from now.
Exactly.
So this is unprecedented. Never before have women ever had this much power,
Mhm.
economic power, but power.
Right.
And so, as we approach the great wealth transfer and also the changing in tides of women stepping into leadership roles and really saying, enough, we're going to go
Right.
towards the light, folks, come on.
Yeah.
Um, Women and wealth are poised to play a very transformative role in philanthropy. So, I'm curious. How do you see women, the way that women, how do you see women reshaping the way that wealth can be used for impact? And
Mhm.
I also want to speak to the listener. Not everyone has a 10 million or $100 million, fund that they're able to contribute to in majorly generous ways. Some people they have $1,000 here, they have
Mhm.
$10,000 there. It's $100. So when
Right.
we're just talking about using our resources for impact,
Yes.
what do you think it takes to really prepare women to be wise and impactful stewards of
Mm.
our resources?
There's so much to talk about here. And this is such an exciting decade,
Yes.
as you say, with so many resources coming into the hands of women. Now, there's such a huge spectrum when you talk about philanthropy, right? So, just to put a pin in the fact that remittances that are sent, small amounts of money that are sent from many, many people from the United States to countries of origin or families living overseas exceeds the amount given philanthropically per year, right? So those small commitments that people are making to help other family members with housing or healthcare or what have you is hugely significant. So let's
Mm,
acknowledge, appreciate, recognize that, right? You then look up the spectrum at really significant givers, Mackenzie Scott, Rihanna, Melinda Gates, right? Women of this stature that are giving millions and millions and millions and hundreds of millions. Um, to me, it all is about intentionality.
mm,
And if we're going to center ourselves in intentionality, it means the woman philanthropist really understanding what is her desire.
mm,
How is she wanting to take her passions and talents to meet the needs of the world? And to me, it's that Venn diagram, if you will, where the passion and talent of the individual or the family or the foundation, however you want to look at it, and the needs of the world overlap.
mm,
That's the sweet spot. I
mm,
mean, I always believe that the philanthropist that is following their passions is the one who will stay in it the longest. And we
mm.
need people to engage for the long term, 100%.
And so, my hearing you say that one of the tools or one of the things that you see that helps women prepare to be these wise stewards is really becoming intentional, to slow down, like you did when you were on that trip, to slow down,
100%.
reflect, connect with your values, maybe
Yes.
tune in with your vision, and then from there become very intentional about what matters.
It's a must.
Mhm.
There actually is so much to be done in the world. We can't do it all. Even the largest philanthropist can't. Right? I mean, you look at the Gates Foundation and they've been very focused on global health and education. Those are big areas, but they're just two areas. It's not homelessness, it's not clean water, it's not all of these other things that have needs and opportunities related to them. So
Yeah.
intentionality is key.
Mhm.
And
And
understanding your story is a place to begin to help get to that intentionality, right? What was
say more
impactful
about,
to you?
yeah,
What was
say more.
impactful to you? What were turning points in your life? What are some of the values, as you spoke of earlier, that really drove you? And what vision are you seeing, right? Where do you believe your expertise and contributions can best be placed?
Mm, beautiful.
Another is that there is a lot of expertise out in the world, right? So the wealth holder doesn't have to have all the answers, right? So there are individuals like philanthropic advisors who understand what's happening, in the social and humanitarian sector that can give you, firsthand information about where, how are you measuring impact and where might good partnership opportunities exist and how do you vet organizations to support, right? They're also experts when it comes to financial management, right? So as you think about the wealth that you hold, how do you want it cared for, if you will, right? So I would also say lean into those individuals that have expertise that you can draw on to marry with the passion and the vision that you have.
Mm.
And then
Which,
the last thing I would say is back to the long term.
mhm,
Like change takes time,
mhm.
and that there is something to be said for staying power.
Mm, mhm. Oh, isn't this the truth? And there's so much of what you're saying around this endurance and resiliency and the continuing to reach out into our networks for the support and that we don't have to be the expert in everything. And the more that we stay close to one of my mentors, a Lynn Twist used to say, what breaks our heart and what makes our heart sing. And
Definitely.
fine line between what it is that breaks our heart and what it is that makes our heart sing.
Absolutely. And Gabriella, I just want to add one more thing about what it is that women wealth holders are bringing to the philanthropic space. There are a few aspects of this. One is that it's often led by this we, not me approach, right? That we we know that women bring community. And we see this in many different examples, whether at the household level or at a community level. But the same idea that it doesn't have to be my name, it doesn't have to be my, you know, imprint on an initiative or a building or what have you. But bringing the collective is is a big piece of this. And that's also something that we see related to donor circles, right? So for donors at a lower level who do want to give $100, $1,000, right? Donor circles are an amazing opportunity to pool resources and still be able to make a really important impact. And donor circles, honestly, are something that women have been doing like over so much time, even before we had the word donor circles.
Yes, I think I was of several of them when I was in my 20s. So for 30, my mom was part of them, decades ago. So yes, it's something, I think it's a way that women have been moving money for a long time underground.
Yes, exactly.
So one of the things that what continues to move me about you is your relationship with nature.
Hmm.
And just women in general, we have a very primary relationship with life and creation because life
Yeah.
literally grows within us. And this is something that I know that you've done a lot of work with as it relates to bringing bring women into nature-based
Mhm.
causes. And how do you see this connection between inspiring women to get involved in these nature-based initiatives? What are some of the ways that you see women can begin making a positive impact today as it relates to the planet that we live on and, taking care of the earth that feeds us and that holds us?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say that um, most of these experiences come through work that I've done with a client of ours, Daughters for Earth. And that's a women-led climate movement of supporting women protecting and restoring Mother Earth. And, right now around the world, there are women in communities who are responding to the needs of Mother Nature, not because they're a climate scientist or not because they're a conservationist that was somehow, degreed in a certain place, but it's because it's what the community needs. It's what their family needs, right? Whether that's because there's coastal erosion happening or because there's, you know, intense warming happening or food scarcity, some of these things that are happening as a result of climate change.
Well, even beyond that, we're 50% way through the sixth largest extinction event with a form of life going extinct every 20 minutes because of the toxicity of the air, the water, and the soil. So even just since you and I have been speaking, some form of life has gone
Yeah.
extinct. So I really hear you in that this is no longer, these are my words, frivolous.
Yeah.
It's incumbent upon us as humans and stewards of our lives and this planet to do this work and to take our hearts into restoring that connection between us and the natural world.
Absolutely. And I think I'll give you an example sort of from two perspectives. From the perspective in the United States, women control 75 to 80% of household spending decisions.
Mm,
Virtually all of those spending decisions have an environmental connection, right? The food we're eating, the energy we're buying, the car we're driving, all of this, who we're voting for, all of it.
mhm,
So that is huge power that I think is not fully understood.
mhm,
Now, in emerging economies where women are much closer to the environment because so many of them are farmers or water collectors, their day in and day out work is interacting with the environment, right? So subtle changes they are perceiving and knowing because there's less water week after week or month after month or year after year, or the crops are responding differently.
mhm.
So the closeness and the power is really there. And I think that, you often speak about sort of awakening and and helping all of us tune in to sort of our higher capacity and higher self. And I think that women have this closeness and are hearing, seeing, knowing, however you want to sensory describe it, that there's an imbalance
Mhm. Mhm. There
and
is,
that there is a need
yeah,
to come back into balance. And
yes.
I would say that this begins internally, it then extends relationally, and
Mhm.
then further extends between the natural world and
Mhm.
ourselves.
Mhm. I'm really moved by the statistic that you shared just regarding the spending power of women in households and the ripple effect around that. And that's something that I think of because I too have become a bit too dependent on Amazon, and it's something
Mm,
Amazon.com. And the waste is just exorbitant. And also, I personally, I don't believe with the politics behind what Jeff Bezos and some of the leading controllers of Amazon represent. And so I've been really looking at how to intentionally wean myself off of that. And I'm noticing how hard that is and how much guilt I feel. And just like when I shop at Erewhon, which is a grocery store here in California, I know when I go in, all the products are vetted. I know
mm,
that all the coffee and chocolate and things, they're fair trade. I know that the animals are treated well. I know, like, I trust that what I buy there has has a has a positive effect. And
mm,
so I am holding for, I know some people are working on it right now, coming up with a sustainable version of Amazon that's just as easy,
mhm,
just as applicable to all of our, daily things like light bulbs and batteries and all the
mhm,
things that we need, but where it has an eye on impact for not only nature, but also the human trafficking that may have been involved in the making, so the whole supply chain conversation, the whole sustainability, carbon impact part of the conversation. So just if anyone knows about that that's listening to this, I'm voting for it. I'm waiting for that company to come forward because it is a tricky thing knowing that we're investing in the thing that's hurting us, but
mhm,
then how to change our habits. And so
mhm.
I just really appreciate just even the us continuing to talk about it and find new ways and create new ways.
Absolutely. And I think that we also have to really honestly look at our consumption
Mhm. Yes.
and and wonder, is that necessary? Is it today that I need it? Is it ever that I need it? Right? Are there other ways of getting it? I mean, I love seeing young people today. They love thrifting. This is a way they shop, right? It's not it's woven in to the way that they're shopping. It's not as though it's like a secondary or, sort of an out there solution.
Mhm.
And I really have to call into this conversation an incredible woman leader, Namante Nkwimo, leader of the Waorani tribe, living in Ecuador. She's a land protector, protecting her land from extractive industries, mining, oil. And she has a new book called We Will All Be Jaguars, which if anybody's, ever looking for gifts, it's an excellent one. And she says that our land will stop being threatened when the desire to consume is brought into check. And
That's
so
powerful.
that interconnectedness
Yeah.
of our world and the challenges that she is facing in a very real way, um, we share that. And that's why, in my bio, you read like a world where all can thrive.
Mhm.
It will look different,
Mhm.
inevitably.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I don't know that that needs to be bad.
Yes. Yes. I hear you, and I also spent years traveling around the world living out of a backpack, living in ashrams and teepees and a cave once in Greece. And I mean, I've lived in all sorts of different environments. And at that time, it was at a formative phase of my life where I was much more on a spiritual exploration and living in a bunch of monasteries and ashrams. And yet I wasn't consumptive at all then. That wasn't, and I was fine. I had all
Mhm.
my needs were met and I was fine. And while I do live in a, large home and have beautiful things now, that's never been a driving force. However, it's the everyday objects that I'm aware of where I contribute to the waste of just the,
Mhm.
oh, I need to get a new toothpaste. Let's order that from Amazon as a singular item.
Mhm.
And all everything that goes into shipping that one toothpaste in a massive box with all the plastic wrap for one,
Yes,
toothpaste.
yes.
And so it's something that I'm really aware of, and there's opportunity for me personally to take the lead in really being more mindful of this.
Mhm.
And to your thrifting point, I made when I started getting more involved in how understanding how I've been long involved with regenerative farming, but when I began understanding how fashion is the second
Mhm.
leading, or it's one of the top three, travel,
Mhm.
fashion, commercial farming are the three of the leading drivers of the climate crisis that we're seeing. And so I made an agreement with myself a number of years ago to largely support consignment or
Mhm.
does resale items for
Yes,
this reason, because there's
yes,
so much going into landfill, let alone landfill, the labor involved. And,
yes,
I think a pair of jeans uses something, I'm going to get this wrong, but like 20,000 gallons of water to make one pair of jeans or something. And again,
right,
don't Google it, but it was
right, right.
extreme. So I just really appreciate us looking, you prompting us and me here to look at what are those everyday decisions and to
Mhm.
ask ourselves, do we really need this? Just because
Mm.
I was at a friend's baby shower a little while ago, and I'm looking at all the balloons and the toys, and I'm like, this is just going into a landfill. Like,
Yes,
yes, it's darling for 2 hours, but it's
right.
just going into a landfill. Do we need
Yes.
this? Perhaps could daisy crowns and things that we forge from our backyard, equally create a special experience. So,
Absolutely. And I think that
decision.
like that sense of curiosity that you just voiced at that party, right? Could this be different? How
Yes.
could this be different? It's sort of the spirit that I think we need to be moving in the world, right? We are in the midst of a transition. It's
Yes.
not an either or.
Mhm.
Things aren't perfect in this moment, right? I mean, even if we wanted to use all renewable energies, it's not physically possible right now,
Yes.
right? And I have always loved the notion, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Mm,
If
mm,
something is good, proceed, right? Because waiting for perfect could, be to the detriment of so many other things.
yes.
And to me, that is the sense right now. There is urgency, 100%. We don't want to be distracted, but also as the individual, we have the ability to do our part, right? To each find the way that we can be the most impactful through our voice, through our funding, through our home choices, what have you. But we're also in the midst of this transition.
Mhm.
And I think that I'm somebody who has worked sort of within the social justice space. And so also having a mind for those who are most impacted by climate change is like another lens that I would offer for people to be mindful of, right? Not only what is my situation, how am I impacting, but what are the communities near me that
Mm, mm,
are without green space, that are significantly polluted, that do have challenges with waste management or whatever any of these issues might be, right? To better understand, at a community or regional
mhm.
way, where might I be able to lend support or at a minimum be better educated on the struggle that they are having?
These are such great prompts. Thank you for this.
Oh, my pleasure.
And as we're starting to wrap up,
Yes.
what counsel, advice, wisdom would you share with a woman who
Mhm.
might also be considering taking that leap of faith, whether it's, following her dream or investing in a project that is really close to her heart, or stepping into leadership, or championing a cause that's really meaningful? What would you offer her if she's listening here?
The headline is that the world is ready for you.
Oh, I love that. Say more. And here I'm the sun
Don't
for us too. So what are
don't delay. Um, it's hard work. There will be inevitably twists and turns, but don't delay
your
because the potential that we each have within us is is powerful. It's um, why would we want to hold that back?
Mm,
Right? If there's something that's so generative, that is fueled by love and aspiration, why should we keep that to ourselves?
mm,
Right? If we are desiring a world that thrives for all, we need a lot of us to be highly engaged in getting there.
mm,
And let the trepidation, imposter syndrome, worry, let that be a quieter voice than your
mm,
heart.
mm, beautiful. That is so beautiful. Oh, Casey, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for inviting me, Gabriella. I
I'm
know
really,
we could talk for hours, but this was a
yes,
treat.
yes, yes, truly, truly. And to anyone that's listening to this, you can find Casey. You can learn, tell us how we can learn more about your beautiful work, Casey.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to check out TaleaInsights.com. TELEA insights.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, until next time.
Thanks, Gabriella.